What's up, guys? So today on the podcast, Eugene and I are going to talk about what I consider to be like one of the biggest enemies to getting really anything started, to getting anything done in your life, on or off the mats. Again, I know about jiu-jitsu and I know about some other things, which is where we're going to kind of direct the conversation. But I think that you can really take this idea towards a lot of different things. And when you listen to it, you may kind of even just kind of listen and think, like maybe I've been putting this or that off, and maybe some of this might resonate with you. So I hope you guys enjoy this one. As always, big thanks to, and by the way, for all of you guys, I want to say this is funny. So on Monday, when we release the podcast, we always release on Mondays, I had a bunch of people message me saying, like, even up to Wednesday.
It's a couple weeks ago, actually.
Yeah, it'll be a couple weeks ago to the time that this is posted, saying, Chewy, I'm listening, because I don't guarantee anything, but if you guys turn the podcast off at like towards like, if you don't listen to the outro, you're missing some stuff, because in the outro we do a lot of silly stuff. We do a lot of silly stuff, and I was just curious, I'm like, is anybody listening? And so I posted this thing, and we did kind of like a little, I guess you'd say, kind of a giveaway, and some people won some stuff. I ended up giving away some bonuses and stuff like that to people, but I encourage you guys, listen to the outro. I'm not going to say we're always giving away something, but there's some, if you enjoy the podcast, it's not just another like thanks to the sponsors. There's usually some rambling at the end that you might enjoy. So I'm just letting you guys know that. Now, with that said, let's give a thanks to our sponsors. We have Charlotte's Web, the CBD sponsor of the podcast. And again, I'm a big fan of CBD. It's so funny because it's like, with CBD, there's so many things because of the fact that it's not like full on like FDA approved and stuff like that. So like you got to be careful about everything you say about it. So typically what I tell people is like, look, I friggin' love this stuff. I notice a massive difference when I'm actually using it versus when I don't. And so if you're someone that like wants to try it, then I encourage you to. Like I said, a lot of the things that I've noticed is the sort of inflammation in my body related to like workouts and training seems to be reduced. Again, I can't prove anything to you. I can just tell you that there were certain training related sorenesses that I used to have in my muscles that are not present when I take it. And then whenever I stop taking it, which I've done because I want to say like, am I really getting some from this, or is this placebo? I notice a difference. They come back. I notice that sometimes it seems to improve the sort of ability for me to wind down and sort of improve my sort of sleep cycle at night. Again, I can't tell you that this is whatever because there's no FDA anything, whatever, but I can tell you from personal experience and from the experience from a lot of people, they've experienced the same thing. And so again, I encourage you guys to check out Charlotte's Web. If you want to try it out, I encourage you to try it out for a month. See what you think. Give it a whirl. See how it goes for you. If it doesn't work, great. Don't worry about it. But if it does, then boom, you got something that might be a new tool in the toolbox that you can implement to help you train better, train longer, and get more from your body. And again, you can use a promo code Chewjitsu and save 15% on your order at charlottesweb.com. And then thanks to our sponsor, Epic Roll. Epic Roll is a jiu-jitsu company that makes rash guards, t-shirts, shorts. They make gis. I've worn all that. If you watch some of my videos, you'll see me wearing their stuff a lot of times because I wear their stuff, especially on the no-gi days and sometimes on the gi days. But a lot of times I wear their stuff on the no-gi days. His Matt's shorts that he has, and I just wore the other day. I was wearing the Urban Legend rash guard, which is the one that he did recently.
Matt's also got some new shorts coming out too, some new colors and some cool stuff. So he's working on all kinds of cool. He's always coming up with new stuff, and it's all him. Like he always creates all this. I'm like, you're like so creative. It's crazy to me because I'm not like that. I'm more like, I don't know, like to I'm just more mechanical. I don't like
You're a physical therapist. You're looking at the body like almost like a car.
Yeah, there's creativity in that. I think I have
always
some creativity.
There is creativity.
But like, man, designing stuff, it always blows me away. Like how people design and create and do all these cool things with logos. So, but Matt does it all himself, man. It's awesome.
You can check that out at epicrollbjj.com. And again, if you look at anything, you like it, you can get it with the promo code Chewjitsu and save 15% on the order. And guys, if you want to support the podcast directly, you can check out patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. On that website, you will have access, once you become a member, you'll have access to hundreds of pieces of content. everything from actual video podcasts. We have full-length seminars that I've taught. We have videos of rolling that are there, some match breakdowns and rolling breakdowns. So there's a lot of different stuff. I basically, with the Patreon, we put the podcast stuff up there, and then I also take out videos or little extras from some of the other products that I sell on my website, and I put them up there. So that could be kind of an interesting thing for you. So if you were thinking about maybe checking out one of the courses that I have, you might look into that and see if there's something in the Patreon that you enjoy, and then that could kind of lead you towards that. But again, check that out. It's at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast for less than a quarter a day, for less than that quarter that's sitting over in your pocket or sitting on
your couch cushion.
The couch cushion. Well, hell, now they're telling you can't even use quarters because they have a coin shortage or something.
Why can't you use them, though?
I don't know. I don't know. People
keep all your quarters.
Well, keep your quarters. I saw something that they were saying there's a coin shortage or something.
Yeah,
they're saying you can't use cash.
I don't know.
But I pay for stuff with like exact change all the time.
Yeah,
because I'm like an old man. I like to have like dollars and change.
Oh, I got you. So they don't have to give you change. I got you.
I guess I don't know if like that's a thing or not, but it doesn't seem to be in Kentucky. But anyway, if you want to check it out for less than a quarter a day, you can become a member, and it's a membership, so it's a monthly thing where we keep updating it. But hey, if you don't want to deal with it, you can always cancel at any time. And it's there. So, with all that said, let's jump into the podcast and let's talk about the enemy to getting something started. What's up, guys? So today's podcast, I wanted to start off with a little idea with you guys, something to chew on. And that's on the sort of illusion of perfection. I think this illusion that perfection even exists, it's the enemy of taking action. It's really the enemy of doing much of anything. For a lot of people in jiu-jitsu, for instance, people will wait forever, waiting for the perfect time to do their first jiu-jitsu class. They'll start to wait around forever for the most perfect time to do their first competition, waiting till they had the best training camp, waiting till they had no injuries and everything else, and until they feel ready for that first competition. For people that are in the internet space like I am, where you produce content and you make videos or whatever it might be, you wait around for the right moment to post that first piece of content. I remember that feeling, like waiting around, like, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it. And like just humming and hawing about it forever. Even I remember with like the business stuff, always waiting around. I'm going to wait for the right moment, the perfect moment. And again, you can probably insert this. This could be the perfect time to talk to that person that you were wanting to ask out on a date. It could be the perfect time to do anything, really. I have someone I know who will wait around for the perfect time to start a workout or start a diet plan, right? It has to be on the perfect date on this, this kind of stuff. So people wait around for this kind of stuff, and eventually I think that to really get anything done, you've eventually got to throw caution to the wind, because you can spend your time preparing, which is a smart idea to prepare, to get things ready. But eventually you just got to dive in. You got to just do something. And even if you think you got everything down perfect, maybe you think you've got it all planned out, it's all ready to go. When everything's ready to go, you're definitely going to be surprised by the mistakes and the unseen challenges that just pop up. Like, I know that there's been so many times where I've done random things, just business things, training things, whatever, and challenges come up that I just never expected. I would prepare for an MMA fight, 100% ready to fight this one particular guy, training 6 weeks to fight this one person. And then the week of, they tell me, "Oh, your opponent's been changed." Oh crap, that's a different challenge. That's a different person. I wasn't ready for that person, but I have to adjust, and I have to, make the adjustments. Show up to the tournament. Hey, we don't have anybody in your weight class. We're going to lump them together. So now you're going to be with the big fellas over there. One of them weighs 300 pounds. Have fun with that. Again, just not what I was expecting. I thought I came in there with a game plan, and then all of a sudden, something changes. It's kind of like what Mike Tyson used to say. Everybody's got a plan until they get punched. And a lot of times when you prepare, you come in with these plans, and then something doesn't go your way, and you simply just have to adjust. You have to kind of go on the fly. If you guys listened to the recent podcast where we were talking to Joe DeCina, I think he said his motto for this kind of stuff was fire, ready, aim. Mm-hmm. So you just fire off, you get something started, and then you make your adjustments. I know that for me, a lot of times the real learning tends to happen when I'm actually doing the thing. You know, I'll prepare for it, I'll study for it, I'll get all the tools in the toolbox that I think I need, and then, you know, I'll try to get into it. And then once I'm actually doing it, that's when I actually learn what the hell I'm doing in the first place, and the real learning starts. I know that when I started getting into the internet business stuff that I have going on, you know, I read about it, learned about it, watched courses, all this stuff. But until I was doing it, I really had no idea what I was doing. Jiu-jitsu was very similar. I remember watching jiu-jitsu on tapes and online videos that I could find back in 2002 and 2001 and 2003. And I remember going to my very first jiu-jitsu class and just being completely like surprised about how much I learned. You know, again, not to say that I was ever perfect, but I thought I was ready for it. I thought I could prepare for this. And so again, you just have to sort of jump into these things. And so I encourage you guys, this is kind of a little nudge from me. Understand that one, perfection really doesn't exist. You know, if you think that you've got something down perfect, that it's been perfected, that it can no longer be done, you know, that's it, then that's when you sort of allow the decay and rot of complacency to set in. You know, those moments where you think, oh, I got it. I figured it all out. You know, you should chase perfection, and maybe you should even word it improvement. Improvement doesn't really imply that there's an ending to it. Perfected is sort of an ending, but improvement allows for just continual growth. But you should always be trying to perfect something to make it better, but just don't ever actually expect something to ever be perfection. You don't expect it to be finished or perfected completely. There's always going to be something you can do, even when you finally have like a finished product. So if you make a video, like for me, I make videos sometimes. There's always this moment, even with podcasts, I always kind of go back and I'm like, man, I could have said this. I could have made it better. Could have made it slightly better. But again, there has to be some point where you just come out to it. When I go to competitions, sometimes I think to myself, man, I could have trained harder for this thing. I used to do this all the time for fights. I mean, I could have trained harder for this. But sometimes you just got to get out there and do it with what you got. And during the matches, I would look back at them and realize the mistakes that I made. I could have done better. So again, I'll try to do it later. Sometimes I'll teach a jiu-jitsu class and I'll teach a move and I'll realize I missed a detail that I really wanted the students to have. So I'm like, oh, I got to make that better next time. So again, it's those mistakes anyway that are what you learn from, that help you improve everything, that help you perfect everything. You're forged by the failures. And this is sort of on a side tangent, right? We want perfection. We hate failure. We hate losing. We hate screwing up stuff. But it's really those failures, those screw-ups, those little mistakes that forge you. Because I think of it almost like one of my buddies, he's a blacksmith and he works with metal, right? So in order for him to work with that metal has to be in a particular state, right? If the metal's too brittle, too hard, and if he was to hit it, it could break off. Mm-hmm. If the metal's too heated up, it's just going to bend too much. But if there's that middle point where as he's hammering it in, it allows for those little strokes or those little impacts from the hammer to mold it into what he wants. Yeah. And looking at it the same way, when you're chasing perfection or when you're chasing to improve, the little mistakes you make, the little screw-ups that you have, those things act as the hammer. They mold you. They forge you into something new. They forge you into something better. But you have to be in the right mindset to take them in, right? Just as the metal has to be in the right state to absorb the blows from the hammer, you have to be in the right state mentally to absorb the blows of your failures. You know, if you're too hung up on being perfect or too hung up on everything being just right, you know, you're going to be broken, just like the metal that's too stiff or too brittle. But at the same time, if you just kind of a pushover, and every time something happens, you just kind of lay down and die, then you're being folded over by the strokes, the blows from the hammer of the stress. But it's in that middle state where, again, you're chasing improvement. You know that the perfection's not going to be there, and you're accepting the things that are going to happen. It's in that sort of healthy point where you can really absorb the impacts of those failures and learn from them. And so kind of wrapping this little ramble up for you guys. Encourage this as or consider this a bit of a nudge from the old Schuster, right? And I encourage you to, whatever it is that you want to do. If you're listening to this and you're like thinking, man, I really want to do jiu-jitsu, go do it. Stop waiting. I don't care if you're out of shape. I don't care if you recently, injured your left pinky toe. I don't care. Just get out and try it. Just get started. if you are, looking towards doing something related to business, again, I don't know, I don't want to speak about a whole lot of things because I'm not good at a lot of things, but there's a few things that I feel like I have some authority to speak about because I've done them. If with related to business and stuff, if there's something that you want to do related to that, get out and do it. Get started. It may not be pretty at first, but damn it, like you'll figure it out on the way. Very few people like immediately start and just have it instantly and figure it out. I mean, go read a good biography of anybody that's been successful. Usually it starts off as a pretty rough ordeal, and maybe 5 to 10 years later it starts to look nice and pretty, which is what people see, but they don't see that beginning thing. So get started. And again, if it's not those things, whatever it might be, if there's something that your gut or your heart is sort of drawing you towards, I encourage you to sort of I nudge you forward. Encourage this as just use this as kind of like someone else talking to you, like a buddy talking to you, like go do it. Whatever it is that you want to go do, just go do it. Go try it. Get started. Because again, you can wait till the perfect moment. You can wait for everything to be right, but nothing's ever perfect. And again, I sort of see that illusion of perfection that it exists. It's the enemy of getting things done. It's the enemy of getting things started, and it's best to sort of get away from that and get started. So that's my little ramble with you guys today.
That's good. I'll tell you, like, perfection for me is one of those. It's a very fine line you have to walk, because you want to strive for it, but it can give you something to really work towards. Mm-hmm. It can also be something that's very almost like holds you back, because sometimes you're like, well, I'm not going to be perfect at this. I don't want to start. Mm-hmm. And I think that, not wanting to start, not wanting to do something, I think one thing for me, like being in, like, say, making a video, you fear a little bit about being judged.
Sure, of course.
You fear, like, people seeing.
That's one of our base human fears.
That's a big thing. Like, and encouragement from you, for example, because I kind of try to, have you guide me in some of those things, help me out in some of those things. It's like, you tell me just go for it. And like, I think that, I want to know from your perspective, as far as what you've done, when you started putting the videos out, there were not a ton of people doing jiu-jitsu specific videos. Mm-hmm.
Not in that manner.
Not in that, like, almost like a vulnerable way. Mm-hmm. Like, I think what you did was you talked about a lot of issues that
they're still not.
Well, yeah.
Very few people. This is the thing. Very few people are okay with being vulnerable and being open.
Right. I think that you answered a lot of questions for, like, say, when I was a white belt, mm-hmm. there wasn't anybody answering those questions. You almost like, sometimes you were kind of afraid to, like, ask, like, your buddy, like, hey man, are you going through the same thing? Yeah. Like, are you feeling this? Are you uncertain? Are you scared? Are you nervous? Like, competition wise, like, I think, I remember Adam and I did our first jiu-jitsu tournament together. Mm-hmm. We never talked about, like, dude, are you nervous? Are you scared? I don't recall.
Right.
Because I was freaking out, So I'm just like, you answering all those questions, I think, opens up, things for a lot of people, but also opens up judgment, because it does show flaws. It shows, like, those imperfections. So, like, I want to actually know from your perspective, because nobody was doing kind of similar things in your fashion. What made you decide just to, like, rip the Band-Aid off and just give it a shot and go and see what happens with the videos?
So with the videos, originally I started off just sharing. Originally, like if you wanted to know how my things grew, I started doing the drilling videos and technique videos, primarily for the guys at the gym. That's kind of where it began. And then all of a sudden, people started following me. And then all of a sudden, and then I had a blog at the time which had a bunch of stuff, but people started sending me messages. Yeah. And they were like, "Hey, how do you deal with this?" Whatever. Like, and it started to surprise me, because, like, oh, I got all these messages that really have nothing to do with,
like, the talkie videos.
Yeah,
more.
That's it, exactly. So basically, they would be a question. So I'm like, oh, like, I remember one of the first ones where I was walking up by the train tracks.
I remember that.
That was inspired because a guy sent me a message, and he was talking about leaving his gym, and he's wondering if I dealt with something like that. I'm like, well, actually, I have. Mm-hmm. And so I started doing them. Now, it was, don't get me wrong, like, there were those moments where I'm like, man, like, when you put yourself out on camera, you're open to everything. But at the same time, the place that it came from was one where, like, look, I've put a lot of time into this thing. I've got a couple answers that might be useful to people. I'm not saying I have the answers. I have some answers.
Sure.
I have answers that could be useful, ideas that could be useful. And I wanted to help people out because, again, with the guys at the gym, it's not uncommon for someone to, hey Chewy, can I ask you a question in class? Yeah, sure. What do you want to talk about? What do you want to ask? Happens all the time. I mean, like when I like for instance, like Jess, if I tell Jess, hey, I'm teaching tomorrow, like for instance, my Saturday class, I'm going to teach. I like if my Saturday class ends at noon, it's 10 to noon. I don't get home until like 2:30. It's not because I'm training longer. It's because afterwards we're sitting there talking, hanging out, chatting. That's kind of a normal thing, and I try to keep that communication open so this way if people do have questions related to it, they can send them to me directly, so they don't have to feel, because I see that all the time. People have so many worries about asking their coaches, like you said, questions that to me they should be able to ask. But anyway, going back to it, the way it started, it was simply just I was getting asked questions. So I'm getting asked these questions. I'm doing the videos. My genuine drive is to want to help someone, so I'll just answer the questions. And I also enjoy videos like that. Like there are people in different niches where I enjoyed the way that they did it. I enjoyed their long talking store style videos. There's several different influences from that where I'm like, well, that's kind of cool. I like that, because at first I was like, this is going to be kind of weird, but then I'm like, wait a second. I love listening to lectures. I love listening to people talk out ideas. I love hearing people give you different insights and perspectives and be insightful in the way that they speak about something. Right. And to me, that was so much more useful to me back in the day rather than the blanket, just keep training. Just keep doing it. It's like, to me, it's like giving experiences and letting people know, hey, I've been there before. Like the thing you're going through, I know you feel like you're the only person that has it. You're not. Everybody has it, or it's really common. It's okay. Yeah. And just giving them someone where it's like you have a friend that you can talk to about something. It's really what it is.
I think being okay with like dealing with scrutiny, or dealing with people's opinions, I think you have to realize why you're doing what you're doing. And I think that you had a purpose, and that's kind of what stood out to me is like you decided like, hey, I'm doing it for this reason, but I'm gonna answer these different style of questions, make these totally different videos where I'm just talking to a camera, because I have something I want to share, I want to help people, so to speak. And so like for me, like sometimes like one of the places that I'll occasionally post videos is Reddit. Oh yeah. And Reddit is notorious for trolling.
Reddit can be all kinds of things. So, it can be super cool, or it can be really nasty.
So it's funny, like I almost expect to hear some bullshit from somebody. And it's not it's not like if it's constructive, great. Like I had one guy who was like, I made a video and he's like, that just looks like shitty yoga to me. Sure. It's what he said. It's like shitty yoga. I was like, well, I don't claim to be showing yoga. I also don't claim to be like an instructor teaching a yoga position. What I'm saying is that this movement can be beneficial for these reasons. Now, it's a great way to do these certain things. And the main thing is like, you tell me all the time, like, you don't have to recreate the wheel for stuff. Like, things have been done over and over. Like, people do the same thing maybe in a different way. And it's just like, you just explain to people like what you're trying to do, and people pull techniques from different areas. You get inspiration from different areas. So that's kind of like where I was like, well, I'm not reinventing the wheel, but I'm pulling inspiration. I'm doing it in a way to share and educate and teach people. And that's when I'm like, when I come from that place and not getting defensive as well. So like I said, for me, that's one thing. Like the fear of judgment's a huge thing, because, well, I'm a physical therapist. I'm a jiu-jitsu practitioner. I'm a physical therapist. I'm the best physical therapist out there. You want to think that in your head, but you're not. There's different people that you want to be the best jiu-jitsu coach out there or the best jiu-jitsu practitioner.
No, I just want to be the best I can be.
Exactly. Because you understand that you're striving towards this idea of, I guess, an idea of improvement. Maybe you're not striving towards perfection, you're striving towards improvement, which I think is probably maybe a better mindset.
Yeah, because I know I'm not going to be the best coach or the best practitioner or the best competitor.
Yeah.
But I can be good, and I can be the best that I can possibly be. Because everybody kind of comes out with everybody has a different disposition. Everybody has a different amount of potential, different resources, different upbringings, everything, So I'm not trying to be the best at anything. I'm trying to basically maximize whatever I've got in me. And that's the difference. There's no such thing as, like, for instance, like an even playing field, right? It's like the idea that somehow like there's no such thing as that. Like, right? Like you could take 10 students who or different from each other. They could have the exact same classes, exact same training. Everything could be exactly the same. They could eat the same foods. Every one of them is going to be different, right? Like even like you have kids in like households. They'll come from the same parents, same upbringing, different trajectories in life. So in our training and everything else, it's not going to be the same. Like I could do everything the same as someone else, and I'm just going to respond to it differently because I'm a different person. So I can't really get too hung up on all that stuff. I just get hung up on what I'm able to do. Like, do I feel like I'm improving? Do I feel like I'm getting more insight compared to what I was before? And if the answer is yes, then hey, we're good. And go back to the ridicule thing or the being judged thing. The other thing you got to ask yourself is, especially when you get into it, like I've had messages from people where there was a guy who sent me a message. He said that his wife had passed away. She had like an illness, passed away, and he was down in the dumps. He started looking to this jiu-jitsu thing, was curious about it, but because he's out of shape, he's kind of depressed, he's like, I'm not going to do this. Watched one of the videos and was like, you know what? I'm going to give this a try. Started training. Trained for like a year. I think, or a little over a year. I think he got his blue belt or something. And then he sends me a message and said, "Hey man, I want to thank you because watching one of your videos gave me the bump that I needed to get in there." Super cool. I remember going to a tournament and there was a guy who was there, and it was at Charlotte when you were there. And I was sitting there watching one of the matches. He comes up. I was watching your guys' matches actually. Comes up and taps on my shoulder, and he says he's got a silver medal around his neck, and he says, "Hey man, I just want to thank you." I was like, "Thank me for what?" And he said, "Listen, dude," he's like, I lost my first competition I ever did. And I was just like, this competition stuff is not for me. But then I watched your match or your video where you showed a match where you lost to a guy and then beat that guy later on that year, showing the wins and the losses, right? The good and the bad, the vulnerable side, right? And he said, I signed up for the tournament that night and I came in here, won several matches, got second place. So thank you, right? Those moments, as far as the internet stuff goes, because again, this also has the ability to help impact the students in the gym as well. Right. Because I've gotten tons of the students as well who say, dude, this thing helped me, blah, 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 blah. So again, it helps them as well. But all that stuff that goes out, that's far more worth it. Like I could give two shits about some guy on the internet that's just miserable. To me, if you're on the internet spewing like negativity and just trying to like be nasty to people, to me, you got a problem. Something's wrong with you, right? Like, because again, for me, like I'll have differences of opinion, right? Like for instance, with all the political related stuff that's going on these days, I have some different opinions, right? I probably lean a little slightly right. I don't agree with everything, but I probably lean a little slightly right. So like I have friends that are more left than me, right? Which I say left and right, like, but basically you get what I'm saying. We'll have discussions. I'm not going to go into that conversation being like, well, actually you're a friggin' idiot and blah, blah, blah. Get educated, look up your facts. I'm not going to say any of that stuff. I'm saying, why do you think that? How did you come to that conclusion? What would you like to see? And let's talk. I have no desire to be negative to you because I'm not a negative person. I have no negativity in my heart to spew towards other people. To me, when people have that all that negative stuff going on, like when they're like lurking around on the internet behind an anonymous, username on Reddit or whatever, to me, it's like, you got an issue. Like I've got messages on Reddit from people who sent me these messages, like, like one person sent me a message. It was an anonymous Reddit name direct message me. It was like, you brought up Muhammad Ali, and this guy had a thing against Lloyd Irvin, and he was like, he started to be like, how could you bring up Muhammad Ali and who he trains with, whatever, and it goes on and was just criticizing me, and that's on him. It's not me. Like, it's not on Muhammad. That's on that guy. Something's wrong with him, And again, and I told him, I was like, if you have a problem with this person, you should talk to that person directly. Yeah. Stop hiding behind an internet name. Why don't you go talk to him? And so to me, it's like you have that thing where people like to spew things, but to me, that's more of a condition of what's going on inside of that person. They're filled with some negativity and they've got to get it out. Whereas, if your sort of default state is not in that way, to me, it's like you don't want to. So like, for instance, like again, going back to it, when someone's out there doing that stuff, I tend to sort of feel bad for that person. I'm like, because if you got on the internet and just started to spew this stuff out there in a non-constructive way, not saying, hey, let me understand more about it, but I'm just going to try to chop you down. To me, what that says is that something in you feels very down. You feel very bad about yourself, or there's some sort of insecurity coming from a place in you that then makes you want to bring people down to your level, right? Because if you find people that are pretty like self-confident, whatever, they just kind of go about their way. They don't lurk around on the internet waiting to like chop other people down. You know, they tend to want to like lift other people up because they feel the benefits of it, the positive effects. And so to me, when I see people that do that stuff, I've changed because I used to be more defensive about it, like you're talking about. But then as I kind of got older, I changed. I'm like, oh, you guys you're insecure. Something's negative going on in your life, and you just need an outlet. It's like when you meet someone that, you know, they get cut off in traffic, and all of a sudden they're ready to fight everybody. That person was like a powder keg waiting to go. There was something already built up, all this negativity. Yeah. You know, like that wasn't the cutoff. That was everything else before then. So the video that I post, if they want to post something negative, like that's on them, not me. So I don't really put too much mind in it. The only comments I really worry about, honestly, is constructive criticism, constructive questioning. Like if someone has a general question, because those are good. Yeah. Like I get those all the time from the students and even on the internet sometimes, which is really good because we'll say, hey, Chewy, why does X, why does this, right? Then I'm like, that's a good question. Let me think about that. Let me give you a good answer. Students in the gym, they'll say, well, Chewy, what if insert this? Well, then we might do this, this, and this. But just the sheer criticism, I don't pay attention to that stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I think you have to, I think just knowing where you're coming from, what your purpose is, and just, try to be positive. I think there's more benefit that comes out, you know, going back to the like perfection idea. I think in some ways there's more benefit of having an like say environment, like having the perfect scenario. Like you went to went to a tournament. Like I expect these are going to be my bracket, or this is the weight class. I expect this many matches or whatever. And then all of a sudden that doesn't go as planned. Maybe your bracket falls apart and you have to go up. So being prepared or dealing with imperfection or imperfect environments, like I think even in training scenarios, like when things are imperfect, when like don't have the exact setup, those are going to be more beneficial long term. Like, because you're being able to adjust more freely.
Sure, and you're in a stressful environment.
Right.
You know, this is probably one of the beautiful things about jiu-jitsu, right? It's like the whole thing where you've got to become comfortable in the uncomfortable. So you become like, when you get into these uncomfortable spots throughout your life, you get used to it. You're like, oh, this is normal. Like this is normal operating procedure, and you become accustomed to that feeling. When you're when you get the butterflies in your stomach. I mean, hell, dude, I used to get the butterflies in my stomach all the time related to stuff to training. I used to have it when I was coming to the gym to train, and I knew it was going to be a tough one.
Right,
dude, I'd have like butterflies.
Still get that?
Not as much. Every now and then, if like I travel and I know that it's going to be a rough session, sometimes you know, like I know like. It's not like straight on butterflies, but it's like I can feel my body's like, all right.
You're revving up.
Yeah, we're revving up a little bit more. Like I remember I went to go train with like, some buddies out in, it was the first time I went out there to train with them in St. Louis.
Yeah.
Kyle Watson and Hattie at his gym. And like I could feel my body kind of like getting revved up because like, oh, there's going to be a room full of black belts I don't have to roll with. All right, let's do it, you know. But again, but when you look at it in the way that it should be looked at, it's not negative. It's excitement. You know, like your body's just excited. You know, when you look at any high level performer, they all have those feelings. You know, it's not nervousness, it's excitement, because I'm doing it. I'm ready to go. It's just excitement. But
just imperfect stuff, like just
but going sorry, I got all sidetracked. I'm all like all over the place today.
Did you have coffee earlier?
I had coffee earlier, but I think it just I don't know. I'm just in a mood today.
Let's do it. Let's roll with it.
My mind's going all over the place.
Let's roll with it.
But but going back to it with like the idea of like being able to deal with the unknown, the chaos.
Yeah.
That's one of the beautiful parts about jiu-jitsu, because you get really used to dealing with chaotic situations. Like for instance, a lot of times people think that, you know, the techniques of jiu-jitsu are what really make it. Part of it is true, you know, but I think probably one of the most valuable things you get from grappling is being in a situation where there's so many different variables that you cannot possibly know everything that's going to happen. You have an idea of what might take place, but like how many times have you rolled with a white belt who does something you're not ready for, right? Some brand new guy. Or how many times has a judo player or a really high level wrestler come in and they do something that you're not ready for and you have to figure it out, right? That happens. And so you are given this tool where your body is able to adjust on the fly. So yes, you get good at these particular positions and everything else, but hey, listen, if you get a curveball thrown your way, you can figure it out. That to me is one of the most valuable things, your awareness, your intuition that you develop in your body. Now you can take that same sort of idea, and the more you throw yourself into unknown circumstances, unknown situations, uncomfortable situations, you develop that on a both physical and an intellectual level. You know, and again, I think if you understand what's going on, you're basically just throwing yourself into situations and realizing, man, you know what, I'll figure it out. I'll be all right. You know, it's not going to be the end of the world. I'll figure this out. If I throw myself into it, more than likely I'm going to have the tools to figure things out over time. It's like anyone that works with me or becomes like a direct employee. Like especially because a lot of the work that I do is very it's not as like paint by the numbers kind of thing. I'll tell them before you ask me, because I know how to do all these different jobs. I know how to do them, but I'll teach people how to do them, and then I'll say, listen, if you need to do it, first thing to do is check Google, ask old Google what's going on, and figure it out, because everything is figure outable, right? Like you literally, you can ask this internet thing.
You can learn anything.
You can literally learn everything.
This day and age.
All you got to do is you have to have the right questions.
Yeah,
right.
That's true. That's true.
I have medical professionals that reference Google.
I think you should.
So you know what I'm saying. So if you have the right questions, you can figure it out. So I'm like, listen, you go to Google first. If you can't get to Google and you've tried everything, then you can come back to me. But most of the time, you know, especially people that have trained jiu-jitsu, they just kind of have that natural, like, all right, I'll figure it. Self-reliance. You know, like, I'll figure this stuff out. I'll make it work.
Yeah. I think an area of my jiu-jitsu, and see if you have one, I'll let you think about it for a second. The area of my jiu-jitsu that I feel like that I always expect it to, or I want it to be a perfect setup or environment, is my takedowns. I have a hard time with going for, and I have okay takedowns, not great. There's certain takedowns that I do. Some of them may be like guard pulls, but there's certain aspects of like going for a shot, like a double leg or whatever, that I want the setup. I want the foot placement to be perfect. I want the hand position to be perfect, and it's not going to be ever. So I find myself being a little bit gun shy, because if it's a bad shot, it gets stuffed. They can come around, start taking my back, get side control, whatever. You know, so that's an area for me. Is there an area like that you always maybe feel like you're a little gun shy in, or you don't quite go for it as quickly as you would in other spots? Because you're perfect and you do everything. No, I'm definitely not perfect. No, I'm kidding.
I don't expect perfection though, so I just kind of I go for things. See, here's the thing for me, like, I don't know if maybe it's just the way I'm wired. I never really expected to be perfect anyway.
Yeah.
And I've always been this guy. Like, so for instance, to give you sort of a contrast, one of my best friends back in the day, we would play the fighting games, or we would just play. We would play video games in general, right? And you guys have probably heard me use this analogy before. My friend would read the instruction manual from top to bottom, would get into it and everything else. Me, I'd flip that damn game on and start playing. I'll figure it out. I'm gonna just do it. You know, like, all right, let me. And when I needed something, I'd look back to the manual. But otherwise, I'm just going. I'm
ready,
not
fire, aim.
Yeah, like that's just the way I am. You know, and that's just the way I've always been. So, you know, I've always had like, for instance, a lot of times when people come in, and I think this is just sort of the wiring of people's brains. Because, like, for instance, I have some students that are engineers, and the way they ask questions is different than other people, because they're like, you know, they've got to know all these different moving parts and stuff like that. They look at it differently than say I do. Yeah. Where I think I'm probably more of the creative mindset, you know, like I'm probably more on that. What is that, left brain or right brain?
I think it's right brain.
I think it's right brain. I can't remember, but
not sure.
I think it's right brain because right and left side. So, but I think I'm more of that, right? Where I think I'm a little bit more little esoteric sometimes, as you guys all probably listened to. I had the friggin' rant that was like, you know, like analogies and stuff like this. Yeah. You know, it's like, it's the way I am. So like with training, I was always pretty easy about just like, let me just try this out.
Yeah.
I've never really had that, well, I don't know the right thing to do. I'll just be like, let's figure it out.
Just go for it.
I was always like that. Even in high school wrestling, I remember like the first day of wrestling, I jumped right in. Yeah. You know, and I'm just trying stuff.
I'm a little bit like, as far as the video game thing goes, I would be a little bit of both. Sometimes I would read the manual. Sometimes I wouldn't. Sometimes I'd do a little bit of both. And I don't know why that is. But I think I was always more, I won't say scared of failure, but I was more like, well, if I can minimize failure, if I can minimize, you know, if I can improve my success rate, that's ideal for me. And that's what kind of, I don't know, I just was always, I think for me, that's personally being hard on myself, like not being a very tough on my own self, like almost like Eugene, you dummy, you know, like I get really hard, like down on myself about that. I think
most people are like that, right?
And so I don't want to deal with that, but I know that dealing with that makes me better in the long run. Like, you know, having to deal with, like, I learned so much more from failure than I do from success. And so I think I use perfection, or the idea of perfection, to minimize failure, but I don't think, you know, that's ever truly, you know, bulletproof. I mean, you're always going to have, you're never going to be perfect, never going to know everything.
Yeah, and you shouldn't beat yourself up over stuff. You know,
that's just all me, man. That's my
I know, but a lot of people are like that. Like a lot of people, I think Jordan Peterson talked about this in his book, right? But people treat themselves like tyrants. You know, there's another book that I read years ago. I think it was called like The Artist's Way. It talks about journaling and stuff. But you know, we treat ourselves like tyrants.
Yeah.
We're like, if we do anything wrong, we start beating ourselves up. Stupid. You're so stupid. You use that negative dialogue.
Yeah.
Whereas if someone else had made the same mistake, we'd be like, "Oh, it's all right, man. You got to just fix it next time." You know, and so you got to check that, because it's not really a conducive way to live. Because like you said, you start to hold back because you're like, I don't like. For instance, just to let you know, if I was going to go train or go for a competition, and every time I lost or did something wrong, I would have to have someone yelling at me, I probably wouldn't want to do it, right? You know, this is some of the reasons why sometimes I avoided stuff when I was younger. It's like because I didn't want to have, you know, adults and stuff like getting mad at me about dumb stuff, right?
Right.
Well, you're getting the same thing with yourself. If I you know, I don't want to beat myself up or stuff, and I used to do it where like I think for me I didn't beat myself up so much as I just hated watching myself lose, because when I was younger I got jumped. My self-confidence was shot, right? And all of a sudden I started wrestling, and I started doing better at wrestling. And then I was like, as I was getting better at wrestling, like I started to feel like, you know, maybe I'm worth something. Maybe I'm pretty good at something. That feels pretty good to be good at something. To go from like a fat kid who got beat up at school and everything else, and beat up and jumped by these people right in front of his home, and to just feel like you hated everything you saw in the mirror. Like that's a hard thing to deal with. And then all of a sudden you start doing something, you lose weight, you get in shape, and you feel like you're good at something, and like you it feels so good. And so whenever I would lose, it would be almost as if like a reminder saying, hey, I know that you think you're cool and you're good at something, but you're still a fat kid. You're still like, that was my hang up, right? So I hated losing, because I lost plenty, right? Especially in wrestling, I was losing a bunch of matches and stuff. But I remember like losing and just hating it, because it was like until I won another match, like I felt like, you know, you freaking fat loser, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I would hate that. But eventually you got to get past that, because I mean, again, if you can't show love to yourself, how can you show love to other people? Yeah. You know, and to me, it's like, if you can't show love to yourself, how can you get through all this stuff? Because again, you're all you got. You know, and so I think it's an important thing that, you know, you treat yourself well. Yeah. You know, even like now, like I used to be what I consider maybe a little bit over disciplined, where like I would just, you know, make myself do all kinds of random stuff. And, you know, if I wanted to say take a day off, been working, you know, 14 days straight, you know, 10 to 12 hours a day just because I'm trying to get stuff going. If I wanted to take a day off because I was just exhausted and wiped out, like, you don't take a day off, friggin' wimp. Get out there and do what you're supposed to do. Get out and grind and hustle, you know. But eventually then eventually I realized, like, I get more done when I take a little bit of rest. Yeah. And if I treat myself better, my mind's much more free to do things. Sure. So I'm much more relaxed.
How'd you come, you know, some of those things like that I kind of just mentioned, and the realization that you came to that, like, being kind of nicer to yourself, being more accepting of your, I guess, shortcomings. Like, how did you come to feel that way? How did you, you know, use failure as more of a motivator? How did you accept it better, or accept losing better? Because, you know, some people, especially a black belt, when you get that black belt, like the illusion of perfection, you know, back in the day,
the illusion of like you're a master.
You know what I mean? Like you see a black belt, especially like when you started or when I started, it's like, oh my God, I'm training with purple belts, and you see a black belt or two belts, you're like, those people are like untouchable,
like walking on clouds.
Yeah. How did you deal with like failure, like as far as being more receptive to it and moving past it more quickly?
Well, early on it started off as simply just you get used to it, you become numb to it, right? Like you just accept it as like a foregone, like this is going to happen. You know, especially as like my young 20s, like I was a purple belt and I was just like, look, this is going to happen. And I found from my coaches making me go towards my mistakes, the more I embrace those mistakes, the better I got.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like so instead of looking at it as like such a negative thing, just embrace it and run with it.
Yeah.
Because it's going to happen. And you can fight against it all you want to, but it's gonna happen. And then the whole like self-love thing, which again, some people they laugh at that kind of stuff because it sounds like you're some hippie or something. Like, oh man, you gotta love yourself, bro.
I think you have to, man.
But you have to. Like, it is what it is, and it doesn't mean that I'm sitting in a room like hugging myself and falling on the floor or something. It just means that like when the inner dialogue that we all deal with at some point that wants to basically just beat myself up.
Yeah.
It's more of like a, what are we going to do about this? You know, so for instance, if it started with a mentor who was like, you told me to do this, you know, told me that, right? But at the same time, like, think about it this way. If I watch myself lose a match, instead of saying, you lost a match, you big stupid idiot, what the hell's wrong with you? Why did you do that? That's so stupid. God, like, oh, you know, that kind of stuff. It's going to say like, now, what did you do wrong? What can you do to fix it? If you went against this person tomorrow, or if you were to do this thing with the business tomorrow, what could you do to fix it?
What could you do better?
What could you do better, right? And, you know, I've done this. This is, I mean, tons of times. I mean, I remember there was a match I was talking about earlier that the guy watched that I put it on the video on the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Went against the guy in the first, in like April. And in April, I lost to him by like an advantage or a point or something. And after the match was over, I looked at it, made some very clear mistakes. I was going to fix those. Went against him in August, beat him because I fixed those mistakes. Very, very simple. You know, there was a little business project that I had going on a couple of months ago. Literally 2 weeks apart. Tried this little technique of sorts, and it flopped. So, well, damn, it didn't work. It's kind of a bummer. Made a couple tweaks. Tried essentially the same technique with just a few modifications. Worked like gangbusters 2 weeks later. Right? So, again, just taking that feedback. So, instead of looking at the failures as a bad thing, it's just feedback. I'm just looking at it as feedback. You know, because, again, unless I stop doing it, I haven't failed. I fail when I stop.
Right.
If I'm still going, it's just feedback. Exactly. It's giving me course correction. Giving me a little nudge towards, hey, this is the direction you need to work towards because here's where you're sucking. You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I think in jiu-jitsu, specifically, what I hate doing, but I love doing at the same time, is training with people that I know are going to be really give me a tough role. Like somebody maybe with a really tough pressure passing game.
Sure.
Someone like for example, Jeff. Jeff and we do morning classes together. Basically, I'm training twice a week right now. Me and him are together in every class.
He's a monster.
We end up rolling every single class. And it's just so funny. Like, we get to these little stalemates sometimes. We get to learn each other's games, but also get to learn, you know, I get to work on the areas that I feel like I have some deficits in. And I'm always better for it. Like, you know, it's funny. I'll leave training one day and I'm like, damn, I got my ass kicked. And then next day I'll leave and I'm like, all right, that was better. I did what, you know, I felt really good. And it's one day apart, or like, you know, one training session apart. So like, but I know that every time I train with someone like that really pushes me, even though it's just like taking your medicine, you know, it's like eating those vegetables if you hate vegetables. I mean, you might like them, but that's what it was for me. Like getting my jiu-jitsu better. Like, I think we did a podcast on it, something about training with someone. Is it training with someone that you hate, or I can't remember. So it's basically training with somebody that really has a tough game.
Sure.
You. And
training with the person that you know is probably going to give you a tough role or beat the crap out of you.
You'll get better. And most people, if they're your training partners, they're going to work with you. They're going to like, hey, this is what I did, or try to do this, or that's where I feel like there's a lot of benefit as far as like, 'cause sometimes, man, you want an easy role. It's like, I want to work on some stuff. I want to have some fun. I don't want to have to like really. But yeah, those are the ones that make you better. Those guys are really tough, or girls are really tough, give you a run for your money, make you really dig deep.
Yeah, I mean, there's a value in rolling with people that are a little bit easier because you can try stuff.
Sure.
But, you know, there's a lot of value in rolling with people that bring forth your mistakes and your errors. You know, one of the guys that in the gym, if he's there on that day, I roll with is Big Chris Nichols.
Yeah, Chris.
I roll with Chris because I know if I roll with Chris, like he'll say, like we'll roll, he'll say what position. I always start on the bottom because I have a hell of a time dealing with his passing. He's such a strong man who comes bulldozing in, and so I start there with him.
And he's agile.
He's agile. He's incredibly agile for his weight. You know. And so I put myself in that position because usually he'll pass my guard at least once, and I have to fight out of his side control, which gives me some trouble.
Yeah.
And he has some tricks up his sleeve, so I'll go with him first. Same thing with guys like Albright. You know, some of these guys just give me a lot of trouble in those positions. I want to test it out.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I want that, and so I'll put myself in those positions. And again, it's a freeing thing. It really is. Like when you don't care so much about the outcome all the time, where you're just like, look, I'm not worried about just today. I'm worried about the long term.
Right.
You know, so when you do a roll, you mess up, you're like, yeah, whatever. Let me figure out what I did wrong. I'll correct it. Mm-hmm. If you're like me and you make videos, that video didn't come out so great. Now, well, we'll make a better one tomorrow. You know, not everyone's going to be a good one. We'll make it better tomorrow. You know, I mean, when you look at my videos, if you were to look through them, it's like I've got some really good videos and some videos that have been very popular, and I've got some videos that were just complete duds. You know, now the duds didn't stop me from making videos. You know, I've had competitions where I went out and won and looked great, and I've had competitions where I went out and the ones where I went like those sound effects.
Yes,
they didn't make me stop.
Yeah,
you know, and I think that this is kind of where you build that resiliency, where you become like thick-skinned or, you know, thick-minded maybe, where you can just deal with that kind of stuff, where like those little setbacks and those little obstacles and the ridicule that you're going to incur, because you're going to get some from everybody. Sure. You know, if you ever try to step out and do anything, you know, people are always going to ridicule you. Yeah. You know, you develop that sort of thick-skinned, thick-mindedness. It's important. What is that book called? Thick Face, Black Heart. It's a book. It's related to business, but kind of gets into some of that stuff. It's worth a read. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept for sure. You know, just being able to, I think more than anything, just using failure or using your imperfections as a motivator, and because it does give you a direction to move in, which is,
well, even if you have them, embrace them.
Right.
You know, because like sometimes you can't change them. Like, what if you got an imperfection in the way that you look? You know, this is like for instance, there's like a sort of a Zen idea, right? Like from Zen Buddhism. You know, the idea of embracing the imperfections, because those imperfections make it what it is. Like if you look at like these little rocks on my bracelet, each one of them has some different little imperfections in them, right? Those little imperfections make them slightly different. You know, each one of us has different imperfections. Like we're not symmetrical. One of our eyeballs is usually a little off, and you know, like if you look at my face, I've got scars all over my forehead from fighting in years. I've got a chipped tooth and stuff like that. I mean, it's like my nose been broken, my fingers are all knobby and stuff. Like I've got all kinds of imperfections, right? Like each one of us does, and embrace those damn things, because you know, like we try to hide them. Going back to what you're talking about, like, you know, we live in the era of like social media, where like everything's this big narcissistic mess, where it's like
all these filters and all that crap.
We live in the land of filters. We live in the land of everybody trying to put on this front, right? Put on this
perfect front, yeah,
perfect front, yeah. Right? Here's what it is, right? Going back to what you were saying about vulnerability, I can share that I can be vulnerable about the stuff that I have, because I mean, if you've watched my videos long enough, you know a lot of stuff about me that has absolutely nothing to do with jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Right? Because I know that, like, look, this is the stuff that connects us, because we all have this stuff. We all have these imperfections. We all have these vulnerabilities. We all have this stuff. Every last one of us, no matter how perfect that person has himself put together, they're screwed up just like the rest of us. And we can connect with that. You know, but it shouldn't be something that you should try to like hide away or tuck away or whatever. Like it's such a bad thing. It's who you are. Yeah. You know, and I think that there's value in embracing that. Sure, the things, if you can improve upon your skill, you should always be trying to. That's why, you know, if you look on all my gis and rash guards, I put that Enzo symbol, that unbroken circle, to remind, you know, myself, like I'm incomplete. I'm not done. But even then, you know, the imperfections, it's kind of it's what makes me. If everything was perfect, was exactly the same, it would be boring. It would be the same. Like, you look at going back to the bracelet. If every one of these was this nice, smooth black sort of orb right here, it wouldn't be as interesting to look at because it would be missing all these different colors and these different things. So again, just like each one of us, the reason why we stand out as unique individuals is because we are different. So if you're a little different, embrace that stuff. It's not something to tuck away or hide away or be ashamed of or whatever. Just we're all like we are.
Yeah.
Okay, perfection is like an ideal, right? Like, you know what I mean? It's because perfection changes from what you believe. If you look at throughout history, the idea of a perfect society, for instance, changes as time goes on, right? Yeah. Because the people's ideals change. Yeah. What we see today as a perfect grappler is different than what we saw 20 years ago when I started.
Perfection is in the eye of the beholder, right?
Yeah.
It depends on the situation. It depends on who's looking at it. Well, you could be perfect to for a certain scenario, a certain environment.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's even like on a day-to-day basis, right? How many people like are itching to like I had a question from a young guy just recently. He just signed up to train. He just started training 3 weeks ago, and he's like training 6 days already. But he wants to. But his gym has 2 days available, so he's I want to train twice a day. I'm like, dude, just you're good. I know you're anxious. You want to get going. You want to be better now, but just take your time. You're exactly where you're supposed to be at right now. Just keep putting in that consistent effort. You'll be all right. But so many of us we're so itchy to be there because wherever there is seems like a perfect place to be.
Yeah.
That we lose sight of the present when it's like, look, you're right where you need to be right now. And you can make the changes you want.
Yeah, and it's nice also if you take time to sit back and reflect on things that maybe you aren't perfect at or you aren't as good as you'd like to be. Gives you a direction, gives you a purpose, gives you a jumping off point.
It can.
Yeah.
Certainly can. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. Hopefully, I hope that there was something when you were listening to that. Maybe you got a little something from it. Maybe you're like, man, that's me, or that's a problem I'm dealing with, and maybe here's something I could do with it. So hopefully you enjoyed that one. Again, if you guys want to support the podcast in a number of different ways, you can either check out Charlotte's Web, get yourself some CBD, try out maybe either the recovery gummies. Those are some of my favorite. The sleep gummies. Jess, my girlfriend, and Eugene over here, they love those. You can take them. They're great right before bed. That's when I take my CBD is about an hour before bed. It kind of helps me wind down. Again, use promo code Chewjitsu, save 15%. If you need some new jiu-jitsu gear, rash guards, T-shirts, any of that kind of stuff, check out epicrollbjj.com. Use a promo code Chewjitsu. Save 15% on the order. And again, if you want to support the podcast directly and get some extra content, you go to patreon.com/the Chewjitsu podcast. And because I know some of you guys might be actually listening at the outro because you're like, one guy actually was funny. He sent me a message. He said, normally I don't listen to this part of the podcast, but I was putting laundry into the basket or something, and he's like, it happened. And he said, I actually listened to it. But if you guys are listening, you can also check out, I don't know if you guys know this, I have an email list where basically I send out messages Monday through Friday, sometimes Saturday, and that's typically where I'm sending out some of the ideas and things like that end up becoming podcasts or YouTube videos. So if you kind of like the stuff that I talk about, you would probably like to be on that email list. Again, you can unsubscribe at any time. I don't like to spam anybody, but if you become a member of that, I give away a few free resources, like a little ebook that gets into jiu-jitsu drilling, an ebook for making your own game plan, plus a video. You can check that out at jiu-jitsu.net and just click on free ebook at the top of the webpage, and you can get that there. And so that's the podcast, guys. And so, yeah.
Nothing, no secret advice?
Secret advice for what?
I don't know. Life. We're talking about life today.
Life. We're talking about life.
Life.
Yeah, I got some secret advice for life. You ready?
Let's hear it.
There is no secret. You got to figure this stuff out. And anybody to try to tell, I hope that when you guys listen to anything I'm talking about, understand it's coming from a place of experience. And I'm just like, this is what I do, right? Here's something I've tried. I never want to come from the place of the crazy guru. And so when you guys are in this stuff, don't ever listen to anybody as if they've got it all figured out, because no one does. Nobody's got it all figured out.
Nobody has all the answers.
No, and even the answers that you think you have now might change later.
Yeah, that's true.
I would never it's you should always put more listen to other people's ideas, listen to other people's experiences, but always trust what you think for yourself, too. That's super, super important. Like, think for yourself. You should be willing to think for yourself, no matter what.
Mm-hmm. Wasn't that is it the sniff test or the marshmallow test or something like that?
Well, the marshmallow test, that was the
what was the marshmallow test?
Marshmallow test was delayed gratification.
Okay. So the sniff test, it's like, if it sounds too good to be true, sounds too perfect, it probably is.
Well, not even that, but like, let's say like something that's working for someone else, just like jiu-jitsu, it may not work for you.
Right.
And so I think that like, no matter what, like you should always be willing to like listen to your own experiences and listen to what you think, because again, sometimes people will extinguish their own thoughts because the other thoughts that are being given to them by someone else, they say, well, they must got it figured out because of this. Like maybe, but you don't know. You don't know what that person does all the time, and I guess maybe this is like coming from a place of like social media stuff. There's so many like turd balls on the internet where like, they try to put on that front like they got it all figured out. And I've met some of these dudes where like they try to act like, oh, I got this stuff figured out, man, on the internet. And then you meet them and you're like, oh,
you're a hot mess.
You are a hot mess.
Hot mess.
So,
don't believe them. Social medias.
I mean, it's like use it for things, use it for experience, use it for, because there's this beautiful exchange of ideas that can happen through the internet, which is amazing. I love that part about it. But always be willing to think for yourself. Don't let people take you and make you think one way or the other. Be willing to be an independent thinker. It's super, super important, no matter what you're going towards.
Well said, Chewy.